Hi guys, this is Mr. Tan, and we're in which class? Entrepreneurship. Good. And we're on P3. So P3 says what?
It says interpret and assess relevant data and statistics to illustrate how macro and small businesses impact on the economy.
Good. So we're specifically saying interpret and assess keywords. Interpret means to what? Elaborate, examine in more detail. And assess means to say how one factor affects another. A bit like analyze. To say how one thing affects another. Relevant data and statistics. To illustrate how micro and small businesses impact upon the economy. So the first thing we need to do is obviously lead into this question with an introduction, and you might talk about, businesses in general terms. Very small introduction. But the next thing you need to do is to clearly define what you mean by a micro, small, medium, and large organization. And we know before, as you've told me, you can define this in one of two ways, either by the number of employees or by the turnover. So you need to go in and you need to say that a micro business is from 0 to 9 employees or under £2 million. A small business is from 10 to 49 employees or 2 million to under 10 million turnover. A medium business is from 50 to 249 employees, from 10 million to 49 million. And a large organization is 250 employees plus, or a turnover of 50 million plus. Okay? So here we've clearly defined it. And then you lead into saying that in this question, we're not looking at all the areas or even SMEs, small to medium enterprises. We're actually focusing only on micro and small. So in terms of how the government looks at it, they actually look at this as views these businesses as small. Okay, small, 0 to 49 employees. So now we need to go straight into the information and we need to look at some data and statistics. So you've got your government table and summary on your online class. Statistical information released by the UK government, depending on which country you're doing this in. So you need to take out the relevant data and statistics and interpret this. You must interpret, and once you've made some interpretation of some basic data, once you've taken it out, then after that you have to assess it in relation to micro and small businesses or small businesses, 0 to 49 employees, and then say how that impacts on the economy. So let's take some data. I know you've been looking at the data, and what does it tell us? It tells us that small and micro businesses, there are 5.6 million small to micro businesses. Medium organizations, 33,000, and large organizations, 7,000. So micro and small businesses, 0 to 49 employees, represents 99.3% of all businesses in the UK. The interpretation of that is that micro and small businesses are extremely important to the UK economy. In addition to this, we can say that micro and small businesses, the number of people they employ is more than the medium and more than the large. Micro and small businesses employ over 12.84 million people in comparison to medium organizations who only employ 3.297 million. And large organizations employ 10.577 million people. Okay, so we can see that micro to small businesses employ a lot more people. Percentage-wise, if we were to put this in percentages, and we can see that micro to small businesses represents 48% of businesses that employ people, whereas medium organizations represent 12.3%, and large organizations represent 39%. So in terms of employing the number of people who are employed in the UK economy, in terms of the private sector, we're not talking about the public or the social enterprise, we're talking about the private sector, then this represents a huge percentage of people employed. And we'll see how later we'll assess this later in terms of government spending and taxing later. But you can already see where I'm going with this, can't you? And then we can see the turnover. Now, even if we look at the turnover, we can see that micro and small businesses turn over £1.3 trillion in turnover. Large organisations turn over a lot more, 1.8 trillion in turnover, whereas medium businesses turn over only 540 billion. You could argue that these small amount of businesses are turning over far more and has more of an impact on the economy. But then again, we really have to look into it closely and say, as well as saying the turnover, we need to get specific information and data and say how much tax are they actually paying. Because how many times does the turnover not replicate how much tax a company is paying? Okay, so again, when you're given these figures, I know you took this information out, so well done on that, but put it in some line graph or bar chart. Yes? So use the data, so you made some interpretation. And the interpretation is that, micro and small businesses are extremely important to the success of the UK economy. Just in case something happens to large organisations, which makes a lot of people unemployed, we've got a large number of smaller, micro and small companies which can stabilise and hold up the UK economy because they're employing more people than large organisations. Yeah, the interpretation from that. Okay, can you close that window a little bit, please? Okay, and when we look at the assessing this, how does it affect? Well, how does this affect? Well, we need to look at government spending and government taxes, because this is all interrelated. And we know that, council tax, we get 27 billion in from council tax. We get 106 billion in from somewhere else. The corporation tax, 45 billion. Only 45 billion from corporation tax. We get 102 billion from VAT. So, we can see all the areas that we are getting money in from. So obviously, the more turnover, you could argue, is going to be better for the UK economy, because the more turnover means that more money is going to taxes. Okay? It is better that more people are employed. And the more people that are employed, even by small organisations, micro and small, it's better for the economy. Why?
Taxes.
Yes, one, taxes, but what? So we get taxes in from people paying, being employed. So we get tax, and also the people pay national insurance contributions. But what else? Why is this also important for the government? People being employed. It's also important. Sustainability, because now we're not wasting money. So the more people that are unemployed are paying taxes and national insurance contributions. That means they are not on job seekers allowance and universal credit, maybe. And if they're not claiming jobs being classified as unemployed, then the government is not paying them unemployment benefits or universal credit because they're employed. Therefore, the government can use that money elsewhere. Does that make sense? Yeah? So, we've got a balance of payments of a deficit of 91 billion a year. Okay? So more money is being spent than is coming into the economy. So interpreting and assessing why this is so important. Well, micro and small businesses is so important because it employs the largest number of people, and it turns over far more, double, 2.2 or 2.5 times than medium organisations, and it's not far off the large organisations. And one could argue that large organisations have sophisticated tax accountancy procedures where they pay minimal tax, offshore accounts, Guernsey Island, where they pay no tax at all. So one could argue that they've got their head offices set up in such a place that we've seen with Google, or we've seen with many American companies that pay very little tax in the UK. Okay? But nevertheless, those companies are still very important. But the micro and small businesses are important because they bring in a lot of tax, they employ a lot of people, and these people that has increased in turnover from the previous year by 7% and 2% the previous year respectively. So we can see this trend is good because it makes us less dependent and less reliant upon medium and large organisations. So it helps the UK economy. Any questions on that? Do you think we've answered the question? Yeah? Good. Okay, so no questions on that. Thank you from Mr. Tan.